very strange. Last 7 days, I've done maybe 3 or 4 interviews, podcast interviews. I just did one with German TV. The German was really wild. They're very left-wing. Every time they gave me an example, I gave them back what Biden had done. Lawfare, getting Trump off the ballot, raiding his home. They didn't seem to know any of that, or they knew it, and they only got their talking points from American New York Times, Political, or whatever.
Is Germany the weakest because they were so demilitarized and emasculated after World
Germany
War II?
is on a suicidal trajectory with its energy policy. It's got negative or flat GDP. The military was a joke. I think they had 12 active tanks. But after Ukraine, they are rearming now. We fought them in 2 wars. I mean, Germany is Germany is Germany. If they want to rearm, their Leopard tanks, their most recent model is some of the best in the world.
But I was wondering your thoughts on Venezuela.
I got that question. One of the German, getting back to them, was, well, what do you think of Donald Trump on the way to invade Venezuela without a congressional authorization? And I'm thinking, did Reagan have one to go into Grenada? Did Bush have one in '89 when he took out the drug lord Noriega in Panama? Remember how they got him out of his house? We abide by the Geneva Convention, but I was very ashamed that we did something that was contrary. When he was in his house, as I remember, we played Barry Manilow music.
Maybe it's because I like Barry Manilow. Even Barry White, y'all.
I would rather be tortured than to listen to Barry Manilow for 24 hours. That's what they did. Anyway.
Cool. Barry Manilow, I like his music.
I know I'm not picking on Barry Manilow. I'm sorry, you Barry Manilow fans, but we did do stuff like that.
Hello, and welcome to Victor Davis Hanson in His Own Words. This is our Saturday edition where we do something a little bit different in our middle segment, and Victor's going to be looking at the choice to side with the USSR and not with Hitler this middle segment. So stay with us for that. First, though, we'll look at a few stories. We're going to look at Europe and then Latin America first and news stories. So we'll be right back after these messages.
Right is still right, even if you stand by yourself.
Mr. Chief Justice, may it please the court.
This is Hans von Spakovsky, host of the Case in Point podcast, which looks at the hottest cases affecting politics, culture, and everyone's daily lives. But we talk about them without confusing legal jargon. And we have interesting guests, like former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. And we end with reviews of classic Hollywood movies relevant to the topic. Case in Point, the podcast available everywhere you won't want to miss.
Welcome back to Victor Davis Hanson in His Own Words. You can find him at his website, victorhanson.com. The name of the website is The Blade of Perseus. He is also the Martin and Illie Anderson Senior Fellow in Military History and Classics at the Hoover Institution and the Wayne and Marcia Buskey Distinguished Fellow in History at Hillsdale College. And so you can see him or contact him, or he has affiliations with those 2 institutions. In fact, the Hoover Institution is his primary affiliation. So, Victor, I know that there's a lot going on in Europe, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, a couple of things. One is that Keir Starmer, who is the left-wing PM at Prime Minister in England, has had calls from the Labour Party, which is his party, to step down. So we've seen that. And then just this morning, and it is Wednesday, we hear that the NATO had to scramble some planes to defend the eastern border against a Russian invasion, which was one of the largest in the last few months. So I was wondering, just some discussion of not just those things, but also our relations with Europe.
Starmer is polling 12%. He's the most unpopular prime minister since World War II. He was supposed to be the up-and-coming new left, sort of like the Mondami, very hard left, first gay prime minister, open borders, hushed up the grooming, rape by the Pakistani radicals with young girls. And people got sick of him because Britain went from about 3%, 4% to almost 10, 12% higher in some areas of illegal immigrants. And that party welcomed them in, and he was the point man on that. And everything that he touched turned to dross. So he's not going to survive. It's just a question of, does the Labor Party internally remove him? Remember, this is a parliamentary system, so you can do that, unlike the United States. It's harder to do it in the United States. They did it on the terms of getting rid of Joe Biden with a coup and then putting in Kamala Harris, but that was for the nomination. You couldn't remove Joe Biden from power unless you went through the 25th Amendment process. But in a parliamentary system, the party can remove him as the official head and then substitute somebody else. So, or call a new election, I should say, as well. So I don't think he's viable. And he's part of a phenomenon that I think in the last week, it's very strange. Last 7 days, I've done maybe 3 or 4 interviews on email with Italian, French people. I've done oral with, podcast interviews. I just did one with German TV. I just did one with Czech TV, British. The German was really wild. They're very left-wing. They kept trying to tell me that Donald Trump was unconstitutional and an insurrectionist and a dictator. And every time they gave me an example, I gave them back what Biden had done, lawfare, getting Trump off the ballot, raiding his home. They didn't seem to know any of that, or they knew it, and they only got their talking points from New York Times, Political, or whatever. But Europe is in general, a readjustment, because that paradigm that they adopted in the last 20 years, and what was that paradigm, everybody? Disarm, so you don't spend. There were only 6 nations, I think 3, and then Trump got it up to 6 or 7 the first term, that were willing to pay their 2%. And that did encourage Putin to go into Ukraine. So it was disarmament, open borders, millions of illegal immigrants, not from a Christian Latin American, but a radical Islamic failed states in Syria, Iraq, or Afghanistan, and all that. So it was open borders, and then it was green, shut down coal, don't build nuclear, don't tap all the natural gas that you could offshore, and France has a lot of it they could tap, and then pay double for electricity and make your industries not competitive. And then when people objected to all of this, then censor them and say you're making it, you're censoring people because of disinformation and misinformation. And that's what they've done, and people are sick of that. So you see conservative movements now in Romania and the Czech Republic, Hungary with Viktor Orban, Meloni in Italy. Macron is not destined to be very much longer in France. And then you see Neil Farage is polling higher than either the Conservative or the Labour Party in Britain. And so the whole paradigm doesn't work. Talking to these Europeans this week, they don't get Donald Trump. They listen to what he says, so they're obsessed with Greenland. And you say to them, do you understand the art of the deal? Well, he was going to take Greenland, or he was going to force. No, he wasn't. Greenland is a colony. You people are anti-colonialists. The colonial mother is Denmark. Denmark was controlling a colony which is in North America. And Greenland is closer to New York City than it is to Copenhagen, number one. Number two, the Chinese and Russians are making inroads into the Arctic Circle. So Trump comes along in his blustering fashion, threatens this and threatens that. And the net result, as we speak today, semi-autonomous council now in Greenland, $1 billion of investment from the mother city into Greenland, more close relations with the United States military to help patrol it and keep the Chinese, and no more talk of taking Greenland. Ditto Canada. as a 51st state, which nobody in their right mind would want, but it did force them to promise to spend 2% of GDP. They're discussing their $63 billion surplus